Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, as you see, there's a number of us in this little team, so we're going to share the presentation. I'll start off by just letting you know that we're all lecturers in the CQUniversity STEPS Enabling Program, teaching in the Computing Skills unit. So this unit teaches the basic skills necessary for students to correctly format essays, reports and presentations, as well as the basic use of spreadsheets. So the unit is offered for 3 terms of each year, with a total of around 300 students per term in both the online and on-campus modes of study. Our study materials are presented in a number of forms on our learning space, which is Moodle, including printed text, multiple small lesson videos, on-campus lectures, online lectures, and small practice exercises. Then at the end of each week, our students are asked to complete a consolidation activity to send to their lecturer. So these CAs, as we call them, are a voluntary formative feedback tool for the benefit of the students, and they're able to be resent to lecturers as many times as a student would like for feedback. They can redo them and resend them, and they get support on their learning from that week. And they can send those throughout any time through the term. And in total, over the 12-week term, we have 10 of these CAs, which we think are important learning tools. So because we think they're an important learning tool for the students, we have long considered the best way in which to present them to our students. Should they be compulsory? Should they form part of the summative assessment? Should we continue to just encourage students to voluntarily submit them? So we undertook this research project to try and answer some of our ponderings. The data for this study has been collated from Term 3 in 2019, which should be noted was an online-only term, so we only had online students, and also Term 1 2020, where the unit was offered online and on campus, although it was unexpectedly interrupted by COVID-19, of course. So that's the background of who we are, what we're teaching and where we've done our research. So I'll hand to Katrina now to discuss our research goals.
Thanks, Michelle. So as Michelle mentioned, all of the lecturers in CSU have acknowledged that we firmly believe that there is a strong correlation between the completion and submission of consolidation activities, or as we all call them, CAs, and students' overall achievement. However, as the CAs are a formative assessment, we don't grade them and there's no evidence to back these beliefs up. So therefore, a small group of CSU lecturers and our unit coordinators decided to embark on research into the relationship between CA submission and overall achievement. Alongside this relationship, we also noticed that students with more advanced skills seem less likely to complete and submit the CAs. Now, this led us to wonder if there was a correlation between the students' perceived abilities and their CA submission. As students are required to complete an initial diagnostic testing prior to enrolling in STEPS, we felt that this diagnostic testing would be a reliable method to classify their computing skills prior to undertaking the unit. So therefore, as our second research goal, we looked at the relationship between the students' initial diagnostic results and their CA submission. And I'll hand over to Hannah now to discuss our findings.
Thank you, Katrina. And so analytics from the online learning management system Moodle were used to find the number of consolidation activities submitted by those individual students, and we compared that to their final grade in the unit. We found that around 47% of students regularly submitted their consolidation activities, and in both terms, the trend of submission suggests a similar pattern. Students generally submitted in the first 3 to 4 weeks and then dropped off as the term progressed, as you can see in the graphs. So when you look at those two graphs, you can see that the trends are very similar, and in week 2 it normally tops a little bit. And it's worth also noting that the first 3 consolidation activities are due within the first 2 weeks of term. That's why it peaks around that 2-week period. So a regression analysis was used to determine the relationship between the number of consolidation activities submitted as the independent variable and the final grade in the unit as the dependent variable. In both terms, the p-value, which was smaller than 0.05, suggested a significant correlation between the number of consolidation activities submitted and the final grade in the unit. This correlation can easily be seen in the following graphical presentation. As you can see, those submitted 4 or more out of the 10 consolidation activities, most of those students, so between 70 and 80%, got high distinctions. And then also to note is the number of fails at the top. The green on the left-hand side, a very low number of fails in the 4 or more submitted consolidation activities. And then if we look at on the right-hand side, students who submitted 3 or less of those consolidation activities, there were not a lot of them compared to the other one who achieved high distinctions. And then the number of fails were significantly higher compared to those who submitted more than 4 consolidation activities. So it is evident through our study that then the number of consolidation activities submitted correlate really strongly with the final grade. And this evidence should serve as a strong motivator for students to submit those consolidation activities for feedback, especially because there's no limit on the number of times that they can submit that to get the feedback until they get it right. And I shall now hand over to my colleague Peppa to fill you in on the other comparisons we made during these 2 terms. Thank you, Peppa.
Thanks for that, Hannah. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. All right.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. So as per our research goals, we also sought to understand the relationship between the students' initial diagnostic testing results and their rates of CA submission throughout the term. So the results that we found from the regression analysis between these 2 variables differed from term to term. So correlations we found were not consistent from term 3, 2019 to term 1, 2020. However, as Michelle mentioned, we were incredibly aware of the possible effects that COVID-19 had on our students during 2020 and how this could have potentially affected the data from that year. So looking at this first very broad graph, which shows the percentage of students who submitted 4 or more CAs throughout the term, grouped via their initial diagnostic testing results. The 3 groups are students with initial testing results ranging from 11 to 20 marks, 21 to 30 marks, and 31 to 40 marks. The testing is out of a total of 40 marks. Something to note, students who scored between 0 to 10 on their diagnostic results were considered outliers to the data set. They only represented between 0 to 2% of the data in each term, so they're not included here. So this very broad analysis suggests that there may very well be a relationship between students' initial diagnostic results and their CA submission rates throughout the term, with students who scored lower on their initial self-assessment, in general, submitting more CAs throughout the term. And this could lead us to think that students who believe their computing skills are low at the onset of their studies have a greater level of commitment to completing the formative tasks throughout the term to ensure that their skill set increases. And when we completed a more thorough regression analysis, we found in term 3, 2019, there was a significant correlation between the initial diagnostic testing results and the number of CAs. And we can see this in the more detailed graph here, which shows the percentage of students who submitted each number of CAs, so between 0 and 10 throughout the term, again grouped by their initial diagnostic testing results. So if we look at the trend here, just focusing on the green to dark blue sections of each graph, all right, we can see that this represents a submission of 4 or more CAs throughout the term. And we can see that the number of submitted CAs reduces as the student's initial diagnostic testing results increase. However, in term 1, 2020, the same regression analysis showed that there was not a significant correlation between the students' diagnostic results and their CA submissions. And we can see that on this next graph here, that there's not as clear or a clear trend between the diagnostic results and the CA submissions throughout the term. And it was interesting to us that these analyses were inconclusive across the terms. We're unaware, obviously, how much COVID-19 affected students' commitment to complete their CAs in Term 1 2020, considering all the dramatic changes in their study spaces, access to computers. Lots of our students had children that were then learning from home, and then, of course, limited availability to devices for study. And this is in addition, as we all know, to the many and varied challenges and effects of COVID-19 on our students during this term in particular. We had that really sudden change of study delivery mode from on-campus to online for our on-campus students. And then all of that, in addition to any number of personal factors, which we all experienced in one way or another during this time of 2020. So because of these immeasurable factors, we believe that this Term 1 2020 data is incomparable to other terms. So what does all this mean? Well, it means that it's clear to us that further investigation is needed in order to make a conclusive statement about whether students' initial diagnostic results affect their commitment to submit CAs throughout the term. All we can say at this stage is that they're not a predictor. So a more controlled comparison of like terms for future analysis is also suggested. So for example, term 3s of subsequent years where all of the students are studying online. But I'll pass over to our final presenter, Chris, now to talk about our recommendations in more detail. Over to you, Chris.
All right, I'll sum up our recommendations from the study. There are 3. So the first one, which we can enact straight away, is that we can advertise the value of the consolidation activities to our students. So just refreshing your memory from a previous slide, you can see that students who completed 4 or more did much better in their unit than students who completed 3 or fewer. However, and go ahead, Peppa. However, we're aware that this is a correlation and not necessarily a cause and effect relationship. So we'd like to investigate further in order to find out if the consolidation activities should be made compulsory, if there would be any advantage for some of those students who might not be completing them at this time. The third recommendation is to conduct further research to determine if there's a relationship between students' initial diagnostic test taken before the unit and their willingness to complete the consolidation activities. So as I believe Peppa mentioned, we were concerned that students were feeling overconfident from the diagnostic test, from the results on the diagnostic test. And though we haven't really found any conclusive results in this study for reasons Peppa outlined, we think it's worth further investigation to see if the changes need to be made there as well. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you very much for listening.
So thank you to the 5 presenters. This is great. Now, Trixie has said this would be great to present at our school's meeting. So would one of you 5 like to pick up on that, or a couple of you? Would you like to pick up on Trixie's comment?
Yes, we would definitely be willing to present it at our school's meeting, Trixie.
Thank you, Trixie.
It's very interesting, the information. We've, as I said, all the CSU lecturers have believed, these sort of points, and we really needed to sort of get something to back it up, because we can all say we think, these assessments do a great job, but this research is definitely showing it, and yes, sharing it with the school to show how, effective this has been is great. But also to show that some of that pre-testing might need to be sort of looked at. Or
I found it was very interesting, especially with the formative assessments or the consolidation activities that you do. That really stood out, that it's quite essential that students do it in order to succeed or to do well. And I think Peppa might have said, I can't remember who was saying it now, sorry, that if they come in with that attitude that they know, they're fairly confident, but they think they know what they're doing with computers, they don't tend to do those activities, and then in turn don't tend to do quite as well with the unit. So I'd love to see more research in this, because I really think you guys have nailed something here that you could definitely delve into a little bit more. Yeah. I can see why COVID also was impacted and didn't really help with the findings, because it was such a different time at that point. But well done on pulling that together, guys.
Thank you. Then that is one of the negatives of teaching basic computing skills in this generation, in this era. What we're teaching the students is what they will use in university, but they have used computers. You know, a lot of the students now have used computers almost all their lives, and they walk into it with this, you know, innate belief that they know it all. But what we're teaching them, when they actually do the activities, the comments that we get that they didn't know this stuff, you know, from those who have done the activities versus the ones who don't do them, who go, oh, I know it all, so I don't need to. You know, we do find that it's, you know, if we could encourage them to do it, they would get more out of it. So, yeah.
And we found that overconfidence can be a nasty little thing in the performance of our students.
And not that we can measure it in this, but when they're doing other units and those other units they're struggling more in, they're more likely to put the time into that and just go, oh, I can do that, that's easy, and not put the time in because they are focusing on the ones they struggle on. So, you know, there's obviously other things going on in their lives that can affect the marks and whatnot, and how much they hand in. So thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, so yes, Rachel said great visual representation of the data that clearly shows the correlation. So this would be really useful for students to see. I think that's a really, really good comment there, Rachel. Anybody would like to speak to that?
That's actually exactly what we said. So we intend to use that graph with them now.